Hey everyone, welcome out to episode 132 of a Nerd Named Mark podcast. It's me, it's Mark. Before I get into, I hit the mic bad that time. Damn, I apologize. Before I get into the final episode of Horror Month, yes, I'm missing one episode because I didn't get to record it. I want to apologize honestly, and I know even my friends are like, "You don't need to apologize," but I'm like, I do. I've been very consistent with the podcast, and I've been very not 100%, but I have been transparent that something, there like I'm not doing too good physically. Like there are some health issues right now. And I thought, even with that aside, I should be able to sit down and record a podcast at least. But most of my energy has gone into working still full time. And even like my other content I do outside of the podcast has suffered from it. And people are like, take your time, like this, that. And I appreciate all the sentiment and all the people who have been like understanding, but this is on me. This is me like kind of beating myself up in turn, like mentally, because I set the bar very high for myself. Yes, I know, like from a YouTube standpoint, for those of you who are watching, YouTube channel is still relatively small, but from a listener standpoint, that's where a bulk of my podcast traffic comes from. And so I feel bad that the quality of the podcast has gone down. I'm trying, and I can say, like, luckily I've got, going into November, every week of November I have a guest on the show. I'm going back to what I wanted to do and what I have been doing in the past, having guests on, promoting other people who are making content, making merch, figure photographers, stuff like that. And that's what I always want to do, is I want to have, yes, I'll have these episodes when I'm by myself, but I want it to feel special when I have someone on. So I have guests lined up, and I've already recorded most of them when I was feeling good already ahead of time, so that way there's no delays in this and that. And I've already edited most of the podcast episodes. So November is going to be really cool. I'm excited. And I feel like it's kind of like a Thanksgiving thing, have these friends and people who are in content creating that I think are amazing, and putting a spotlight on them as well. So that is all of November, but it is still October. I'm actually filming this on Halloween. I busy day at work. I'm exhausted, but I was like, no, I need to do this. I need to stop like dilly-dallying, I want to get, like, this is the episode I wanted to do. And this is like something where I'm not like ranking something or, being like pessimistic about horror films. Cause let's face it, horror has been a roller coaster in the last like decade. Like I've done an episode last year about PG-13 horror films and how I feel like they're good, but we need to get back to horror. And I think in the last 2 years we have, and that's why the theme of this episode is me being hopeful about the future of horror, going over the last 2 years of all these strong films we've gotten that have restored my hope that we're going back into like a renaissance of horror films. And obviously, I haven't seen it yet. Terrifier 2 is out. I've heard nothing but good things. That thing is killing it in theaters. I think it's about to hit 7 million. I know everyone's like, 7 million. That's on a $200,000 budget. A horror film like that, that's so niche. Terrifier isn't like a Scream or a Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or Halloween. Terrifier is very niche. And the first film was like under the radar, but like a cult, like classic already. And I'm excited to see it. I can't wait. So let's get into, I want to start with 2021 because that was a good year for horror. I mean, yes, I already talked about Halloween. Halloween Kills was one of the big hitters of that year, but we got things like The Forever Purge, Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, Malignant, which I thought was just, that caught me off guard. That was so freaking good. And then, we had things like Fear Street trilogy on Netflix. I actually just saw this film on Netflix, and it's been around since last year. Was There's Someone Inside Your House. I thought that was a pretty cool film, very unique idea behind it. It had tropes, but I still thought there's something cool about that film. And then one of my favorite ones, obviously, that I was hyped for was Antlers, because I thought this was going to go deep into Wendigos, the lore of that. That is one of my favorite cryptids, being, part Native American myself, and not like, oh, I'm like 2%. No, like actually being Native American. I love Wendigos. I love the lore of it, the stories. you know, and so that's always, especially being from the Northeast, even though like, yes, the north, northeast, northwest, like there's different types of lore for them. I would, I'm going to do it even one of these days, even without it being like October. I want to do a deep dive into Wendigo stuff because I love Wendigo so much. We even had like some cool like fantasy horror, like the night books, which was really cool. The kid that was like telling the stories, he was kidnapped, like that was really cool. um but you know, one of the main ones still was like Malignant, was like that one. Even The Werewolf Within, which I thought was hilarious, and I love a slasher with some comedy in it. You give me slashers, you give me comedy, I'm sold. I was shocked, you know, 'cause, you know, Scream was Scream. I thought it was really good. That was like I've talked about it in the past on the podcast. Another really good sleeper hit if you haven't seen it, because I have a list. Um, The Wrong Turn remake or reboot, that caught me off guard surprisingly. Like it wasn't like super like scary or anything, but it was creepy. Like I really enjoyed that film a lot. And I think like films like those really kind of like gave me that like turnaround where I'm like, okay, things are looking up for horror. Because if I want to see something really gory and this and that, like it would be something like on Shudder. It wouldn't be something that was like in theaters, mainstream people are talking about. But then, you know, things like this year, like we really got a lot of stuff. And one of the things, like I would say, like that, like, cause I was talking with a friend, like I feel like I'm in a renaissance of horror as a fan right now because of things like we have Shudder as a streaming service. Trauma has a freaking streaming service. You love like Toxic Avenger, all that stuff. Like I love that. Sergeant Kabuki, like all those things on Trauma, so good. And you know, we've never had this level of ease of access to horror. I remember, you know, going to like was it not like Hollywood Video, and then there's another one. I always forget the name of it, but it was like a mom and pop store in my town. And I would literally have to like get the obscure VHS tapes because, you know, like for horror, and that's how I was watching. Like I never like there was never this easy. Even now, finding some stuff like some classics on DVD, freaking expensive, and I'm like, damn, like this is like a lot to like find, like and hunt down. Like when I go to Book Off now, I go to the horror section for DVDs, and I'm like looking through, and sometimes I'll see a DVD, and I'm like, I didn't know this got released. It's so obscure. Then I look at the price on it; it's like $50. I'm like, damn, I kind of want it. Like, you know, I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. Should I? Maybe. No, I'm not gonna. Um, but yeah, I'm looking at my Google Doc, and there's like all the stuff, like deep dives and things. I'm still gonna do these throughout the year. I'm not gonna wait until October. I made that decision the other day because I was like, I can't sit on all this stuff until October. You know, I love horror so much. It's a big part of like who I am. Not my like identity online or anything, but like a part of me. One of my favorite. Like I have tons of horror Blu-rays over there and DVDs. I have VHSs still. I love. Speaking of VHS, I knew VHS is out. I need to watch that. Like I've been avoiding spoilers. That looks good. I can't. I'm gonna watch that tonight actually. But you know, it's tough to like, you know, be a horror fan, and like for the longest time a lot of commercialized horror was in theaters. Like I love the Final Destination franchise. I did a whole episode deep dive into it. I'm never going to crap on that. We actually just watched 5 of them yesterday. What's today? How Monday? On Saturday. We watched like 5 final, like one after another, cuz we do that every year. Like we love Final Destination, and I think it's one of the best franchises, one of my favorites. Cuz there's no, like there's some films like you go to Halloween, I just ranked all of them. There's some lulls in the franchise. Same with, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street. Final Destination, there's no lulls in that franchise. Like every episode, every movie's a banger, you know? Like I love them. So, um going over, you know, different uh you know, things like that, watching those, and like outside of Final Destination, like a lot of the commercialized ones weren't, they weren't doing much. Like everything was, brother, we had this whole like span of time where everything was like an exorcism film, like Exorcism Emily Rose, The Last Exorcism, Exorcism of Molly, whatever. Like there were just so many, and but they were all like diving into like the found footage type, which I love. I mean, obviously I've talked about this at nauseum. found footage horror as a subgenre, my favorite. More than slashers, more than paranormal stuff, more than like even comedy, because I love horror comedy. But like found footage is like my favorite. I have curated such a like collection of found footage that I could probably do a whole entire podcast just reviewing a found footage like movie every week. And I thought about doing that, but like I don't have time, honestly. I could barely get this done on time. So that's when I say like there was like a lull period, because it was like a lot of like copy paste. Everything had the same thematic tone, same overall story, just characters and some plot points were changed, but let's like you could just swap out this, and this, and everything like just seemed the same, you know? It didn't, there was no variety, there was no spice. This, then last year, but this year though, holy shit. And I'm gonna swear, holy shit. We got things like X, great freaking film. And then on the other side of things, we got Nope from Jordan Peele. Like, I loved, and a lot of people kind of like, I like most of Jordan Peele stuff. Us was really good. Get Out was phenomenal. Nope was really good. I talked about it on the podcast briefly when I was going back home for the wedding. My friend, best man, best friend basically. We went to the theater. We saw Nope in these like D-box seats where the chair was like moving and the speakers, everything. It was crazy. Love that film so much. And we got things like Watcher, you know, the new Hellraiser reboot, that was good. I love that. That was gory. You know, then we got things like Orphan First Kill, which I think it was to do a prequel this far later on. It just didn't hit the same way the original one did, but I still enjoyed it though. You know, we got things like Firestarter, which a lot of people didn't really care for, but I thought was really good. No disrespect to Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore was like between Cat's Eyes, E.T., Firestarter. Like she had a good repertoire even at a young age, but I really enjoyed this Firestarter. I really enjoyed it. We even got the weird Texas Chainsaw Massacre like remake or sequel, which wasn't the best, but it was decent. It was enjoyable. And then we got things like Prey, which I'm still saying is one of the best like horror movies I've seen this year. Even though it was more sci-fi, less horror, kind of action based, but like of the subgenre, like I think Prey was really freaking good. One of my favorites I've seen this year. There's just a lot. And there's so many I still need to see. Like, I mean, in my list, even I'm like, oh man, like one of the ones we rented, it was fun. It was like a fun film. It wasn't bad. We rented the Spirit Halloween movie, and while it seemed like one big commercial, there was a charm to it. It was a good, like, enjoyable sit down and just have fun popcorn flick. You're not looking for depth of a story. You're not looking for like, you know, over creep, because it's not, you know, it's not made just for kids, but it's like young adult, and it's meant to be just an enjoyable one. Like when you watch like Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps, like that type. I thought it was gonna be closer to Goosebumps, but it wasn't. That kind of, you know, that kind of made me kind of mad. Another one too, Beast came out with Idris Elba. We just watched that because that was on one of the streaming services. I forget which one, because we have all of them, and that was really good too. That I actually really enjoyed that, except the ending kind of took me out of it. It kind of seemed a little, I was like, that was a little too much, like, you know, fighting like that. I was like, what is this, a T-1000 freaking lion? But see, like stuff like that like gives me hope, especially, you know, like Hellraiser and this and that. Like we don't have to be so coddling. We can actually give you gore. We can creep you out. We can scare you. We can bring the like just the gore back, and it's not a trope, and it's not shuffled away to a streaming service, or, you know, these are getting promotion, these are getting ads, these are getting budgets again, and I think it's been long overdue. Sorry, I'm trying to stay hydrated, thirsty. And, you know, this is what gives me hope for the horror franchise right now, is that, especially after seeing Barbarian. Watched that last night. Wow. That caught me off guard because like watching the trailer stuff, you're like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. Then you watch it and you're like, son of a bitch, this is a good ass film. And I'm trying not to spoil any of these films because I want everyone to watch them and this and that. So the movies themselves, I'm not going into details about. I'm just giving you examples of movies that are really make me hopeful that like horror is gonna get back to where it was because, you know, as someone who loves this genre and like has studied it and this and that, you go back to like the 70s, 80s, even early 90s, like, you know, you would see news articles and that, like lines are out the door to go see these films and people like, you know, being creeped, like all this stuff. And it's like, then horror kind of like this, like became the swear word where like horror films weren't going to theaters as much. And they were direct to DVD or made for TV or just like not getting any promotion. And they were becoming indie. Then, you know, in recent years, it was like most of them were just going to streaming platforms. And I'm not counting like 2020 and 2021. We know why things were going to streaming platforms. That the thing that happened that was still going on, you know, that stuff. But I'm saying like mid to late 2010, like 20, you know, 20, like 2009 to like, no, more or less like 2013 to like 2018, 19. A lot of stuff was just going to streaming services because they probably just didn't see the appeal of making money in theater. Like, let's face it, most stuff, like, I attribute most people are spending their money going to see like the MCU films and these big budget blockbusters, making it worth it to go out. But I feel like a horror movie is worth it to go out and see, you know? Like a good horror, like, I'll go see it. Like, if I had time and this and that, I would go see the Barbarian in theaters. But it just so happened it popped up on HBO Max, and I was like, well, then, I'm gonna watch this. So when I say I'm hopeful about horror, I'm saying from the start of like getting horror mainstream again, you know? Like, getting and like I said, for the last time it was franchises, Final Destination, Saw, stuff like that, and it's like, in the Conjuring films, those were always fun to see in theaters, and I'm really glad they're working on another one. So I'm hopeful that we're gonna see this continue into next year. We got Evil Dead Rises coming, Arise or Rises, I don't know which one. That's coming out in like April. I'm really hopeful for that. I love Evil Dead so much, and you know, going forward, like I know the Final Destination, I think it's getting like a soft reboot, not really a remake. And I believe Saw, the same thing has happened with Saw. So even if these franchises like getting horror back in the mainstream, I think Barbarian and Terrifier are a good example recently. And same with the movie X, that like we're seeing the non PG 13 movies make money, get a lot of buzz around them, and they're getting mainstream attention, and I love that because that's like when a Scream gets announced, yeah, it's trending and this and that, but it's like these are new IPs, these are new stories, these aren't sequels and remakes and reboots and stuff like that. So like the more originality that's actually going into theaters and getting these marketing and getting these promotions, I'm all for it. So I'm really hopeful, especially after the last 2 years. Like I'm beyond ecstatic for some more horror to come out because that's my genre. Same with video games. Like, you know, we got a new Silent Hill video game remake for Silent Hill 2, something on Silent Hill F, but then we're getting the Silent Hill movie. We're getting another one of those from the guy who did the first Silent Hill film. So I'm like, okay, that was actually a decent film, so I'm okay with that. Sadly, Resident Evil, the TV show, got canceled. Well, I said it wasn't the greatest. I slightly enjoyed it. I still like Welcome to Raccoon City. I know a lot of people didn't. I got it on 4K. I freaking enjoy it, you know. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the horror genre going forward. I think, like I said, we're getting into a renaissance of it. We're gonna like horror is becoming mainstream again, and that makes me really happy and excited. Um, so yeah, that I mean, this was just a quick episode. I just wanted to talk about horror and like my hopefulness for the future of it, and just talk about some of the films that came out in the last, 2 years that I really think are helping pave the way for this. But that's it for this episode. That's it for the Halloween. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing some more Halloween stuff, probably out after November here and there. I'll do some horror themed episodes because I don't want to wait for just October. Honestly, it's exhausting to wait all year. So I'm just gonna sprinkle those in the topics here and there. I thank everyone who's been reaching out to me, commenting, liking, DMing, emailing. I am feeling the best I can right now. if it was something super, super serious, I would obviously say something. So it's not like anything like that. It's just some physical issues that are just like, you know, taking their toll on me that I need to get taken care of, which I will be soon. Um, so, but I think everyone who's been like concerned, being positive, and like this and that, like I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Don't worry, I'm still here. So, with that being said, this has been episode 132 of a Nerd Named Mark podcast. Nerd Named Podcast. It's available on all the podcasting platforms. You've been hearing me say this since like July of 2019. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Amazon Music, I think now, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast. It's on all the platforms, basically. If it's not, let me know. I'll put it on there for you because I don't want to have people have to download apps they don't want to use just to listen to the podcast. But if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button. I just passed 800 subscribers. My next goal is to hit 1,000. And that'd be really cool. But even right now, 800, that's ridiculous and insane. I appreciate everyone who's been subscribing. Like, that is, thanks. It's ridiculous. Like, I do this as a hobby and something I enjoy, and people actually like watch and listen. So I can't thank you guys enough for that. Be on the lookout for November. Like I said, a lot of guests. It's gonna be crazy. A lot of good guests. So with that being said, I thank you guys for watching, and I thank you guys for listening. This has been episode 132 of a Nerd Named Mark podcast. My name is Mark, and I'm a nerd.